of all, before we begin, I want to thank Vlad for bringing this all together and for inviting me to do this. This is a huge honor, and I really, really appreciate it. I also appreciate Alyssa, who organized all the back-end stuff and all the logistics that made this happen. A little bit about me. My name is Colm Quinn. I'm the Deputy Director of Strategic Communications at CSIS. What that means is I teach our scholars and try and educate our scholars on how to understand a digital audience and how to understand how they can bring their research and the great ideas that they have to a wider audience and to understand the tools that can bring that there. I've worked at CSS for about the last 5-6 years. I started there as an intern when I moved over from Dublin, which is where I'm from, it's where I studied. So if the accent is a little weird, that's why I can accent forth from the Irish to the Americans. So I'm going to speak to you for a little bit, and then we are going to have lunch. So if you can stay with me, that's fantastic. Just a little bit about CSIS. It's a lot of things at once, and a think tank is kind of an interesting proposition to begin with. There's a lot of different think tanks in the world. I think the total count is just under 7,000, and they can all do different things. Some of them are built for advocacy, to push a certain agenda. Some are built as fronts for organizations, to be honest. What we do is we study international affairs, we study foreign policy, and that comes from every continent in the world. We have programs studying Middle East, Africa, Europe, South America, Asia, but also the big global issues that are touching the whole world. So cybersecurity, global health is probably our biggest research program, trade, economics. And so there's really not something that's happening in the world right now that we don't touch upon. And so there's a lot that we can say about it, there's a lot that we try and say about it. One thing that's unique about us, in certainly Washington, DC, is that we're bipartisan. So that means that we do not take any particular political party's side. Our scholars, we have about 100 of them in-house. They're both Democrat and Republican, and they've worked for Democrat administrations, they've worked for the Obama administration, there's Republicans who've worked for the Bush administration, and way back, and it's something that we pride ourselves on. So when we do our research, what we want that research to do is to be able to be enacted into policy no matter who is in charge. Now, usually in the US, foreign policy was kind of a bipartisan issue to begin with. People kind of agreed across the board what the US goals are. That's kind of different today, and we're kind of working through that right now, and we're kind of trying to figure out what that new world is. But it is something we try and strive towards. Another thing is we're independent. We don't take any specific policy position. We let our scholars do that. We don't let a corporation do that or a foundation do that. We let our experts find the solutions to the problems that they're focusing on. One thing we also are is a convener. So we bring together people from clickers work all over the world to speak at CSS. And so this is just a few people we've had this year. It's the Prime Minister of Australia, Prime Minister of UK, Secretary of Defense Jim Mattis, and Melinda Gates, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. We host around 500 events a year. So we bring people together in events like this. We bring people together for speeches, for small roundtables to talk through big policy issues of the day. And our ability as a convener is something we pride ourselves on too, the ability to take people who may not agree with each other always to come together and try and find common ground. Another thing that we are, and very relevant for this conversation, we're talking about the changing way that media is being consumed and changing way people are informed themselves, is that we're very much a publisher. We publish about 100 reports, policy reports a year, and then in the hundreds in terms of commentaries on the issues of the day. And so the headwinds that are approaching the media right now are very similar to the headwinds approaching us. How do you get people to care about research? How do you get people to read it? How do you get people to engage with it when the trends are changing, the technology is changing, the style of consumption is changing? And so that's what I'm mainly here to talk to you about today, is how my organization, CSIS, is approaching this, where we've had success, where we're still working on it, And I think it will help inform people, no matter what your background is or your industry is, as to how you can approach it and how you can take those ideas forward and try and think about how you can better do that for your organizations. So this is where we started. This is 2013, and this is the CSIS website. I just took a random report using the Wayback Machine, which is a fantastic tool. This is how we were presenting our information. It was busy walls of text, and this is what it looked like on mobile. You would have to pinch and zoom if you really wanted to see it, and you had to find out that the actual way to actually see the report was to download the PDF here. It was not a simple way of doing things, and we were very much talking to ourselves. Now, 2013 is interesting because it's actually the same year that The Guardian published their Snowden files and kind of made this big splash by integrating video and text and graphics in a way that hadn't really been done before by a major outlet and made it that engaging experience. This is what we were doing. So we had a long way to go in terms of trying to inform our readership. Now, like I said, we had no mobile capability. The design was pretty much non-existent, and it's wall of text. Now, text is not a bad thing. People need to read text, but when you're presenting it like this, you're leaving a lot on the table, and so we had to think a little differently. And this is the sad truth. This is the report I was talking about. It's a very think tank style title, Offensive Cyber Capabilities at the Operational Level. This is an important study. It was talking about how the US could go on the offensive when it comes to cyber. I think that's a really relevant topic today, and this is 2013. And I don't think anyone was really seeing it that way because we buried it on our website the way we had. And so what really drives the idea of why we wanted to move it forward is this is a lot of work going into this. This author put a lot of her time into this, probably a year of research going into it, and it's kind of being left on the table because only the people who really know about it can access it. And it's kind of how we had been doing things at CSS. The way these things usually go is that you make your report, you print out a couple copies, you bring it to Capitol Hill, you hand it out to a few congressmen, you maybe have a meeting with a few congressmen or senators, you maybe hold an event at CSS to talk about the report, and then you're done. You hope that someone listens. And in today's world, that's just not enough. I think the average age of a congressional staffer in the US is 31, which is a bit older than I would have thought, but it's still the kind of person who is going to be using media the same way that anyone else their age is going to be using media. They're not unique, they're just consumers like everyone else. And so the idea that we can treat them like some sort of backward media consumer would not work for organizations. So we had to think differently. This one I always like to bring up when people talk about PDFs. This is not CSS, thank God. This is the World Bank. If there's anyone here from the World Bank, I apologize, but you're probably tired of seeing this. They did an internal report on their analytics on how many people were reading their research PDFs, which came up with this conclusion that in the hundreds, they are simply not being read. There's literally 0 people had clicked on it, 0 people had downloaded it. And so this is 2014. Things have moved on a little bit more, but there's still organizations who are pushing this way. And so, if you needed to underline how much this needed to change, I always like to show people that. But the trends are encouraging. This is from Pew. This is 2016, so it's pretty recent. We talk about how there's been a shift to watching video and how social media has changed the way people are engaging with it. But the trends, especially for young people, are actually pretty positive when it comes to engaging with content, especially when it comes to reading. So if you look at the 18 to 29 cohort there, that's pretty small, you can see it. 81% prefer reading the news and they prefer reading it online. And that's really encouraging for us because a lot of the stuff we do is pretty meaty. There's a lot behind it. There's a lot that goes into it, and you do need to kind of dive into it. It won't take a 30-second video to do it. It really does need that time. And what's different to say, a wall of text is what people see is that online gives you this whole capability to, you can read, but you can also mix up the media, you can create an experience that's not just a tome or a block of text or a wall of text. And so I'm encouraged by these trends, and that helped us to kind of think through what we need to do to change as an organization. Another thing that inspired us was this idea that, and it actually applies to fake news too in a more negative sense, but the idea that if you present yourselves well enough on the internet, you're relevant, and you can be validated in that sense. So on the internet, nobody knows your dog. It's a famous New Yorker cartoon. So we had the same idea, but on the internet, nobody knows your think tank.
Sorry.
Yeah. Okay, well, there you go. On the internet, nobody knows your think tank. And so and this is true for any organization, we have this ability with good design and good thinking to actually present yourself in a way that's engaging. Again, a way that we were not doing when we were putting forward just the same walls of text that we were doing. And so we had to rethink who our competition were. Brookings and Council on Foreign Relations are our natural rivals. They are fantastic institutions, produce fantastic work, and we compete with them in the ideas space, and it's a lively competition. But if we're just thinking about them as our competitors, we're kind of limiting ourselves because, again, they're talking to the same audiences we're talking to. That doesn't help us broaden out who we are as an organization. So we need to think differently. Think more about these guys. Think about the Times, the Post. These are organizations that are very similar to CSIS in that they are putting together extremely important information on extremely important topics of the day, but in a way that's engaging, in a way that gets people coming back, in a way that gets people wanting more. And so if we were going to move forward as an organization, it wasn't enough to be saying we're the best think tank. We have to be saying that we're able to compete with these guys, we're able to compete with these guys in terms of design, in terms of engagement, in terms of the people that we're trying to get. And so one of the things we had to think about is how do we move past this, and how do we get to a sense of a more engaging style. And I think the kind of watchword for that, and I think it's obvious to most people in this room, is that we don't want to tell the story, we want to show the story. We want to show people why this is important. We want to show people why they should care about this policy issue. And so to do that, we created what's now called the CSS Ideas Lab, which is what a think tank would call something, because it's a very think tanky name. But it is a group of in-house technical experts, in-house producers, in-house artists, for want of a better word, who can actually bring our research to life. We went in-house because we thought that working with our experts rather than for our experts was the best way to bring our research to life. If we outsourced to someone else who didn't understand our work, we wouldn't be able to have the same impact. One thing that we really wanted to do was make sure it was a collaboration and not just an expert saying, I want this to be a video now, or I want this to be a graphic now. Very much it's an iterative process where we go back and forth and we talk about what they want to do and what they want to show and how they want to show it. And it is very much in line with kind of the creative process that a lot of, say, creative agencies would have. So we started small. Started extremely small with one person. He was a bit of a unicorn. Vlad knows him actually, but he was a video producer, but also knew a bit of coding. And what we started off with was just a video. It was a video on the energy, the new geopolitics of energy, how different gas and oil in different countries was going to change how U.S. foreign policy was conducted. Now, this was essentially just a mechanical PowerPoint, like you press play on a PowerPoint and it goes through. Like, this was not innovative, this was not really bringing things forward, but it was a start. It got people thinking about how they can show their research in a more visual way. And so it got people in the center to think more visually and got people to think more about how they needed to present their ideas. And so throughout the year that started, more people would take on more visual projects, still kind of pushing in more the video direction, still people trying to copy what the person who came before. And I think when you're an organization that is established as ours, people aren't as likely to take risks because they want to know that it works before they try it, and that's natural, that's human. So our next big project, or big risk, was this Asia Maritime Transparency Initiative, which is AMTI, as we call it. And it's probably our most successful project to date, and it's probably our best example of our moving away from just telling people the story and telling people what they should think, to actually showing what's going on and providing analysis based on that. And so we created a website that showed the story of the South China Sea. Now, we had been telling people about the South China Sea, we've been writing reports. This was a well-known topic within the research communities, but there's nothing more stark than actually showing what's going on. China and other countries have been reclaiming disputed reefs, disputed rocks and shoals in the South China Sea and building on them. Just repurposing sand, putting cement on, creating airstrips, creating radar posts in a way to kind of claim the resource-rich and strategically important channels in the area. And so instead of what we usually would have done, which is put this all together and put a PDF and call it a day, we created this site that continues, that doesn't stop. It's been going for the last 2 years, 3 years actually, and now we've created this platform where people can actually view the story in real time as things happen. As The Hague decided that China's islands were illegal, we were able to analyze that in real time as it was happening. And because of that, something that would have seen, say, 30 people and we would have been happy with that, has now seen over 500,000 people have been and seen our website, read our analysis, and seen these images. And this is an example of what you'd see on the site. A lot more visual, not telling, definitely showing. I definitely encourage you to go check it out and see it. But it was a massive departure for us in that we were not going to stick with one thing and leave it at that. It's an ongoing project. It's not a gravestone. Keep moving and keep changing. And so we were very lucky in that we've had some massive success. This is the front page of the New York Times in 2015. We knew we had these images that we had commissioned from a satellite company, and we were going to just publish them on the AMTI website. But we sat and had a strategy session. We're talking about what's the best way to get this forward. And we said, well, maybe we should show this. Maybe we should see if the Times would like it. So we kind of rounded up the chain with the communications people there, and it finally got to a reporter who was talking about it. And we thought it would be a story. We thought, they talk about it and they show the images and that'd be it. Well, we didn't realize that they put it on the front page. And so you can see it there, tiny, tiny, tiny letters, Center for Strategic International Studies. And this is a huge change for us. This is not something that we do usually, but it showed what the power of visuals could do and what the power of a compelling policy story can do. And it was a huge success for us. And it led to policy impact. This is Admiral Harry Harris. He is the head of the US Pacific Fleet, so he controls the aircraft carriers and everything that's going on in the Pacific. This is him at a congressional hearing, actually using our images, using our graphic designers were super happy that their fonts choices were used, and the arrows were still, they didn't change a thing, they just used the same images. When we see things like that, when we see people actually not just listening to, especially using the stuff that we put out, it really shows the kind of impact that kind of way of storytelling can have. And this is just last week. This is March 28th. This is more satellite imagery that we had showing that China's pretty much finished building in the South China Sea. And can put its warplanes and whatever it wants on the islands at a moment's notice. Something that China's denied, which is something that we wanted to start that conversation. We wanted to be able to have people talking to each other about a big issue like this. And so with that success, we're able to build more platforms. We're able to build more sites. Just give you some examples in a moment. And as we've grown, we've been able to add more people. So now we've got web designers, web developers, audio video producers. And this wouldn't be possible if we weren't able to show people that this stuff worked. We wouldn't be able to get the funding if we weren't able to show that this stuff worked. And so now it's a team of about 10, 11 people who are just dedicated to working with our scholars to bring their policy stories to life. Some of those have been Reconnecting Asia, which is probably our most ambitious project to date. It maps every single infrastructure project that is going on in the Asia and Greater Asia continent so far. So whether that's a railroad, whether that's a road, whether that's a dry port, a seaport, you can actually zoom in on this. You can find out who's funding it. You can find out where it's going. You can find out when it's supposed to be complete. And it represents kind of a move from us away from telling people and even further from showing people and actually letting people just find out for themselves, giving them the tools that they need to do their research, whether you're working for some infrastructure company, whether you're in the Mongolian government, Kazakhstani government, whether you're just a citizen that wants to know what's going on in your country and who's paying for it. You can find it using this tool. And it's updated regularly, it's updated by our research team, but it took a lot of back-end work from our Ideas Lab to actually make that a reality. Another small kind of fun thing we did was the Modi economic scorecard. Modi, the Prime Minister of India, has a big, ambitious reform schedule, and so this tracks in real time how that's going, whether he's actually achieving his goals, and so it's just kind of a fun way of showing how that's going. And again, a big departure from, you could just put out a report, but this is literally, this never stops. This has been going for about 2 years now. Another one that's kind of fun is the Task Force on Family Health. Usually we put together a task force to deal with a policy issue, and you put together a report and that's it, you have an event and that's it. This actually gave people the opportunity to follow how it was going in real time, follow all our trips as we went, and again, engaging them in a way that's kind of data rich and is kind of giving them a look under the hood about what we're doing as an organization. Another thing we do is podcasts. This is me in a much more flattering photo than what I look right now. And I host our weekly podcast, but from doing that, we've been able to branch out. And we actually host, there's only 9 here, but we actually host like 12 podcasts right now on all different issues related to US foreign policy. As I wrap up, talk about just the broader impact. Great stock photo choices. It's led to a big explosion in how we're able to talk to people online. We've got extremely high Facebook following now. Twitter is following behind. We started on Twitter a little late, so that's why those numbers are a little low. And we're growing on Instagram. Instagram's kind of a funny one for a think tank, but it does at least lift up the hood and show people, we're a real organization looking at real things. And yeah, it helps us drive our traffic. We've been recognized by our peers. We're already known as the top defense and national security think tank in the world, but we've also been recognized for having the best public engagement program in the world and also the best use of media. So that shows to us, like I said before, we don't need to benchmark ourselves against think tanks by any means, but it does show we're moving forward in the right direction. So what's the road ahead? And I know it's nearly lunchtime, so I'm going to really go quickly here. One thing I'll say is that we haven't finished yet. We're still producing PDFs. We're still producing reports that can fall a little flat, but it's a constant evolution. It's constantly getting people on board with the idea that they don't just need to tell a story one way, that they're engaging ways to tell stories. Second thing is we're very lucky in that our leadership from the very top was really into this idea of telling the stories in the way we wanted to tell them. And so that buy-in was really essential, or else we wouldn't be able to take the risks that we were able to take. Another thing is that you're working with these people with PhDs, extremely smart people, and you've got to teach them new tricks in a way. And balancing that relationship of telling someone who knows this stuff better than you'll ever know it, telling them that they're wrong and that they need to think about it differently is a real skill. And we're still kind of figuring that out and working on that. But that's part of the collaboration process. I just want to very quickly talk about what I think about in the future. We've gone from telling people, showing people, giving them the tools. I think the next step for us is listening and actually incorporating feedback as a way of enhancing our research. People are afraid of Reddit as a platform. I think it's actually has a lot of potential as a way to create that kind of iterative feedback loop. Same with Quora. There are people asking questions that if you're not answering it, someone else is. And I think that's another place that we can really improve on. Another thing we're trying to incorporate on our sites, this is just the footer for Reconnecting Asia, is trying to get more comments and feedback and get people to correct us if we're wrong and to help us out. And so we just put little things like this saying, this is a work in progress, help us out. The research doesn't stop on publication. It's a constant thing. So, Shine, which means that's it in Irish, and Dziękuję, which means thank you in Ukrainian, I think. Please enjoy your lunch.